I told you that the world will have 9 billion people to feed by the year 2050. That's nearly 2 billion more people than there is to feed right now, according to the Genetic Literacy Project. What happens if there's not enough food to go around? Most of us will still be around in the year 2050, and a lot of our grandchildren will just be starting their lives. And I know I don't want my grandchildren not to be able to have enough food. I'm an NDSU student pursuing a career in agriculture, and we talk a lot about how we're going to be able to feed 9 billion people. And I also went to the College of St. Benedict for 2 years to study nutrition, where we talked a lot about genetically modified foods. GMOs are genetically modified organisms, and they are the solution to how we are going to be able to feed 9 billion people by the year 2050. And today I'm going to tell you about what GMOs are and how they've been studied, why they're so beneficial, and why they're necessary for the future. GMOs are not a new thing. They've been studied for quite some time. A GMO is considered any organism whose characteristics have been altered by inserting a gene from a different organism or a modified gene using genetic engineering, according to the Free Dictionary website. Corn is one of the main GM foods we plant in the United States. Just about 85% of the corn planted in the United States is a GMO, and that's because they are resistant to herbicides, and that's a way of being able to kill the weeds without having to kill the corn, according to the Huffington Post. And if you look over here, I don't know which one you would think is genetically modified, a seedless watermelon or cheese, but actually a seedless watermelon is considered a hybrid because it's chemically altered and not genetically altered, and that's according to the Genetic Literacy Project. And then cheese actually does contain GMO products 70% of the time because GM rennin is used, according to Rob Walbridge. And the reason for that is because if this GM rennin wasn't used, it would need to be found in the stomach lining of calves, and I think a GM product is much more worth it than having to go into the stomach of calves to get this. As I've said before, GMOs have been researched for a long time. There's been over 2,000 studies done to prove that these are safe. And as John Entine talks about, there's been a study on 1 billion animals which proved that GM foods are not only nutritious, but they're just as safe as any other type of crop. And GMOs are highly beneficial to everyone. They're beneficial to farmers because they decrease pesticide use by 512,000 pounds of pesticide for every year they're used without using other products that are not GMOs. And that's according to the Genetic Literacy Project. And also, GMO foods are drought resistant often, and these crops are able to live even without a ton of water sometimes. And without these crops dying, profits can just be greater for farmers. GMOs also benefit consumers. Like I said before, by the year 2050, we'll need to be able to feed 9 billion people, and that is important to note because GMOs can increase the yield of crops by 7 to 20% compared to non-GMO foods and crops. And if we are able to meet the demands for food for people by using this, the products are going to be cheaper because the demands are met. As you can see, GMOs are very beneficial, and that's why they're so necessary for the future. The agriculture industry must be allowed to make advances in their technology in order to be able to feed the same amount of, or feed more people with the same amount of land. And so GMOs are a way of being able to do that. And as I said before, for all people, GMOs are necessary. This shows that for each person, one person on this poster is worth 1 billion people. And as you can see, in 2050, we will need to feed 9 billion people. And right here, this marks that the orange people are the ones that are not on Earth yet. That's how many more we're going to need to feed. And by the year 2100, it's estimated that we're going to need to feed over 11 billion people. So that shows how many more people we're going to be able to need to feed. And that's a little bit scary if we're not able to use our technological advances. And I think it's kind of selfish for people who believe that they're going to be able to have food either way, and like in developed countries to feel that way, because we need to be thinking about everyone and all the people that might not be able to have food. And prices are going to increase a lot if the demand is not met. So it's very important to be able to meet the demand with genetically modified foods. As you can see, GMOs are necessary for the future. And GMOs are the only successful way to feed an entire population by 2050. As we talked about today, GMOs have been studied for a while. They're very beneficial and they're important for the future. I hope now you see why GMOs are such an important advancement, and you can be an advocate for the use of GMOs to increase crop production and also feed the future.